So now we come to planet X. Get ready. Luke chapter 23, verse 44 to 45. Now it was about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. Then the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was torn in two. Matthew 27, verse 51. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Is it a miracle to tear a veil? Of course not. The miracle was it tore from the top to the bottom. Because if a man did it, it would have torn it from the bottom to the top. See? It's always these things that people say, I can explain things, but God always has one up on humans. So when the veil was torn from top to bottom, the earth quaked and the rocks were split. What's interesting about this is at the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, there was a 3-hour eclipse in our time from noon to 3 p.m., plus an earthquake. Well, how is that possible? Have you ever thought about the fact that God just left us a clue about another planetary body? Why? Because the maximum time that our moon can eclipse the sun is 7 minutes and 31 seconds. Can't do any more than that. How can you have a 3-hour eclipse? Well, it's possible with the flyby of a much larger object, at least 7 times the size of the Earth. In other words, perhaps planet X. There's always an explanation. The miracle was the timing. Jesus says, it is finished. Gives up the ghost. And then lights out for 3 hours. See, no human being can orchestrate that. Only God can do that. And then an earthquake as well because of the gravitational pull or the electric force of another planet passing by. So Yeshua's sacrifice included some major events, an earthquake and a 3-hour eclipse. There's a detail to this picture that I don't have time to explain, but there's some amazing things that happen at the crucifixion. It's not just merely, other people have been crucified, so Jesus' sacrifice is the same as that. It's not just mere crucifixion. It's all of the events combined and the fact that he was sinless and did it for you and me. Let's go to another biblical event, Joshua's long day. In Joshua chapter 10, verse 11. And it happened as they fled before Israel and were on the descent of Beth Horon, that the Lord cast down large hailstones from heaven. Heaven is where? Look up. A lot of things happen from the sky in the Bible. So these hailstones fell on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died from the hailstones than the children of Israel killed with the sword. Verse 12, Then Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Aijalon. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped till the people had revenge upon their enemies. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? That's the book of the righteous. Jasher is not a name. It means righteous. So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and did not hasten to go down for about a whole day. That's what? 12 hours. Daylight. And there has been no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord heeded the voice of a man. A scientific explanation for the earth's rotation slowing down is possible. It's possible. The miracle was in the timing. The moment Joshua stood there on the battlefield and said, Sun, stand still. There are scientific forces that could act on the rotation of the planet. Namely, planet X crossing the Earth's orbit on Passover in 1400 BC. That could have brought the meteor shower that killed more enemies than Joshua's army and extended daylight by 12 hours. All right, and this is a scientist who's done all the computations, so I'm not going to go through all that. On Joshua's long day, planet X could have looked 50 times the size of the moon. Could this be what Jesus spoke about in Luke chapter 21 when he said, men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. He clearly is pointing us towards a direction that most of the church and the world are not looking. He says, watch out, something's going to happen astronomically. By the way, Joshua's long day, guess what, was recorded as China's short day. Isn't that amazing? and around 1400 BC. There are records of that. And then again, the Chinese, who have the longest astronomical record of any civilization, reported a guest star in 1054 AD. And that's also the same time when the British recorded, and there's a painting here, of some stellar body with a massive debris tail following it. And there's a drawing of that right there on the right side. Well, let's go to Noah's flood. I think you're going to be very surprised by this. We have covered Noah's flood extensively in the 4,000 Years of History DVD set. I think it's number 3. I've brought that teaching out to many churches, and it always attracts, appeals to the teenagers and the youth. They're just amazed. Noah's flood was really just an amazing incident, and it's full of science in the Bible. And so much of what we see today is a record. I believe all the fuel that we pump into the cars, it's a reminder of Noah's flood. Millions of dead organic material buried suddenly form fossil fuel. So for all the people who say, I don't believe the Bible, I don't believe it happened, you're pumping it into your car every day. It's amazing, isn't it? But here today, I'm going to give you some new details in addition to what you learn in the 4,000 Years series. In Genesis chapter 7, verse 11 and 24, let me remind you what happened. In the 600th year of Noah's life, this is what people don't know. They thought it just rained for 40 days. It didn't. Number 1, it says, God said, all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were open. Which is an interesting phrase. It's not just that it rained. Something broke apart in the heavens, and something broke apart in the earth's crust. And the waters prevail on the earth 150 days. Please say 150 days. Okay, no detail in the Bible is extraneous or superfluous. Everything is there by design. Gives us a clue to something. And by the way, most things happen not once. Almost nothing in the Bible happens once. So everything that happens here is a prelude to something else. Only in Noah's flood, God promised, never going to flood the whole world in the same way. Yet everything usually happens twice. So these details here, they'll be handy in the end times. 150 days. Because guess what? Book of Revelation also says one of the trumpet judgments will last 5 months. 5 months is 5 times 30 days, 150 days. Jewish calendar days are 30 days a month. Very interesting. There's parallels between Genesis and Revelation all the way through. Can't get into all of it. But here's what happened. The Bible is saying the flood was not mere rain for 40 days. It says the canopy of water that was ruptured from above. There was above the atmosphere another layer of water. Remember the firmament separated the waters from the waters in Genesis? There was water above. All right? And that was ruptured, and then it all broke apart and fell down. The earth's crust was also ruptured from below. And 150 days later, the waters receded. Well, how is that possible? Well, if you map out planet X's orbit, it seems that planet X has an orbit that crosses the Earth's orbit twice in a period of 150 days. So you see, point 1 is the sun, point 2 is the first crossing of the Earth, point 3 is the second crossing as it leaves the solar system. So here's a scenario that may explain Noah's flood. Planet X crosses the Earth's orbit, and then each encounter brought debris and meteors upon the Earth. So here's the first flyby. On the second Passover, 3000 BC, remember Passover is the only feast where if you missed it, God gave you grace, you can celebrate it a second month, the month later. Well, Noah recorded that on the second Passover, 3000 BC, or 5,000 years ago, the waters broke from above the heavens. Well, a meteor shower would have done that, all right? Small meteors would have opened the floodgates of heaven, shattering the upper firmament that divided the waters from the waters. Then, 5 months later, it makes a revolution around the sun, comes back, the earth happens to meet on this occasion. The debris of planet X, once again, as it exits the solar system and the earth's orbit. And so this is probably what happened. 150 days later, a second flyby of planet X drags a 110-mile wide asteroid into a collision course with Earth. And there's a reason why we have quite an exact figure on the size of this asteroid or this meteor. We'll show you in a moment. Well, we have to say asteroid because it's so big. Here's a moment of impact. A scientist calculated at a trajectory of 22, or an angle of 22 degrees. There's the moment of impact. It would have sent shock waves into the Earth's core and all throughout the Earth. And that would have ejected some of the Earth's crust, leaving basins for water to recede into, which today forms our oceans. Something catastrophic happened. Now, science always denies catastrophic events until catastrophic events happen. Did you know that last week an earthquake, 7.7 earthquake in Pakistan, created an island like that? If you don't know, just go on the news and see it. They always say over millions and millions and millions of years, and yet on the news, turn it on, boom, an island just got created. In the same way, something suddenly happened and the waters then receded. Something scientific, something explainable had to have happened. Well, a 110-mile diameter meteor or asteroid would have impacted the Earth, and the Planet X gravitational electric influence would explain the start of Noah's flood, canopy broke, the end of the flood, a meteor came and then ejected some of the crust, which left basins. It would also explain the tilt of the Earth, without which we wouldn't have seasons. So at the moment of impact, the Earth was pushed 23.5 degrees, which allows for seasons. I always believe in the beginning, there was no rain in the beginning and there were no seasons in the beginning. Why do we have seasons? Because this impact at Noah's flood tilted the Earth. Now we got seasons, winter, summer, and all that. And it would have also cracked the Earth into tectonic plates. Does the Bible talk about this? Yes, it does. Isaiah 24, verse 19 and 20. Behold, the Lord makes the earth empty and makes it waste, distorts its surface. Verse 19, the earth is violently broken, the earth is split open, the earth is shaken exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard and totter like a hut. That sounds like the Earth's 23.5 degree tilt. Planet X could provide a scientific explanation for all these things we observe. The Earth's crust is definitely cracked like an eggshell into tectonic plates. What we see on the globe is not exactly the plates. Underneath, they're all cracked. Now, one problem a scientist had with this was that if such a large impact had occurred, the amount of heat that would have been generated would have wiped out all life. That's just the physics of it. And so this person who didn't believe the Bible challenged this other scientist who believes the Bible and says, well, you got a heat problem. It's just impossible that this happened 5,000 years ago. He says, well, how about this? What if the entire surface of the planet was covered in water? Isn't water a perfect conductor of heat? Would have absorbed all the heat. In fact, I saw on the news today, global warming scientists, because they're having a real hard time now explaining global warming. They're saying, oh, well, the ocean is such a good conductor of heat. Global warming is happening. We are responsible, but the oceans have absorbed all the heat. You see, the miracle was the perfect timing. He says, get in the ark. The meteor shower came. Planet X could have passed by. Maybe that's the gravitational force that pushed all these meteors in Noah's way. He got in the ark. He was safe. Then it came. Then the big meteor that helped the waters to recede came at the moment where the entire earth was covered with water, absorbing most of the shock, most of the heat. Amazing? God is amazing. His miracles usually involve perfect timing.